Hey guys, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all having an incredible day and I hope you're having a wonderful holiday season. Today is my second last video for my 12 days of Christmas, which I really hope that you guys have been enjoying. I've saved the biggest case for last, so this is going to be part 1 of 2. Part 2 of this video will be going up tomorrow, so make sure you come back tomorrow to check that out. This case is humongous. Even in 2 parts, I won't be able to fit in every single last detail because otherwise I would be here for 10 hours because today we are going to be covering the Laci Peterson, Scott Peterson case. Laci Peterson was born Laci Rocha on the 4th of May in 1975 in Modesto in California. She was the second of 2 children to Sharon and Dennis Rocha, who already had a son named Brent Rocha, and he was born a few years before Laci on the 26th of January in 1971. When she was just 1 year old, her parents separated and eventually finalized their divorce years later when Laci was 7 and her brother was 11. And Laci and Brent lived with their mother Sharon after the separation, who later remarried to a guy named Ron Gransky. They met probably a year after the separation when Laci was 2 years old, and he helped to raise Laci as if she was his own daughter, but the kids were still super close to Dennis. They spent a lot of time visiting his dairy farm in Escalon. Brent said his father was really kind and loving and that he was always very affectionate and loving towards his children. He loved their visits and he loved spending time with them. Laci went to Thomas Downey High School where she was a cheerleader. She was actually a cheerleader through junior high and high school, and then she graduated high school and went to California Polytechnic State University where she majored in ornamental horticulture, which is like studying, growing, arranging and tending to decorative plants and flowers. In 1994, when Laci was 20 and still at uni, she met Scott Peterson. He was a couple of years older than Laci and he was born on the 24th of October in 1972 in San Diego in California. He was the only child to his parents Lee and Jackie Peterson, but they both have children from previous marriages when he was born. An interesting little side note, but his mother Jackie's father was actually murdered when she was just a toddler, and she was raised by Catholic nuns because her mother had a nervous breakdown after the murder. So she didn't have a great childhood. It's really sad to think about, I guess, everything that she had to go through in her lifetime, like this upbringing of her father being murdered and then having to deal with this whole case. But I guess because of her upbringing, she really wanted to make sure her 5 children had a beautiful life growing up. She raised her children, including Scott, in San Diego, and they just had this really typical, happy suburban life. When Scott was growing up, he was said to be really kind and really happy, but he was also very confident and strong-minded and also a really high achiever in school. He was also really good at golf, and by the end of high school, he was one of the top junior golfers in San Diego. He even enrolled in Arizona State University on a partial golf scholarship, but he didn't stay this like well-mannered kid forever. He was drinking a lot, he was seeing a lot of women, and he ended up getting kicked off the golf team. So he transferred to California Polytechnic State University, the same uni that Laci was at, and he was majoring in agricultural business, bye. And then, like I said earlier, they met in 1994. Scott was 22 and Laci was 20. They met at a place called Pacific Cafe in Morro Bay, which is where Scott actually was working, and one of Laci's friends also worked at this cafe, and she told her friend like, hey, he's kind of cute, give him my number. So he called her, set up a date, and they hit it off right away. Like, I'm pretty sure before they even went out on their first date, Laci like called her mum and told her, hey mum, I'm gonna marry this guy, you need to come down here so that you can meet him. And her mum was like, whoa there, cowgirl, slow down, you haven't even been on your first date yet. I mean, I guess Laci was right. Their first date was deep sea fishing, which is such an interesting date idea. Laci didn't even like fishing and she was like seasick the whole of their first date. Literally the next week, Laci's mum Sharon came down to meet Scott and things were just moving really quickly. Apparently when Scott first met Sharon for the first time, he bought her a dozen white roses and he also bought Laci a dozen red roses. So I mean, immediately, what a kiss ass, right? Just kidding, but immediately, what a good first impression. He called her ma'am. Sharon thought he was like this really polite, well-mannered, good guy. Why wouldn't you? They all went out to dinner together at the Pacific Cafe, which I mentioned Scott worked at, and because he worked there, he actually asked the owner to create a special appetizer. I think it was like some sort of scampi for their dinner. About 2 years after they started dating, they moved into a one-bedroom apartment together, and then they got married at the Sycamore Mineral Springs Resort on the 9th of August in 1997. It was a nice ceremony apparently. There was about 150 people there, and they both looked very much in love. But unfortunately, not long after they got married, Scott started acting like a massive sleazeball and started cheating on Lacey with all of these different women. There was definitely 2 women that we know of, but I mean, who knows, there could have been more. The first girl that we know he cheated on Lacey with, he actually told her he was single, and this girl found out that he wasn't single when she walked in on Lacey and Scott in bed together, which, like, I can't even imagine that scenario, that whole situation. Like, did Lacey see her walk in on them? Why was she inside the house when Scott and Lacey were there together in bed? I just have so many questions about this. The second girl that he cheated on Lacey with, he told her he was married, but they were in the process of getting a divorce. And apparently this girl found out this was a big fat lie when they were at their graduation ceremony, and Lacey went up to Scott and put like a lei over his head, and this girl saw that and she was like, wait a minute. Aren't you getting a divorce? So after Lacey and Scott both graduated from university, they opened a burger store called The Shack near campus, and they did this with a loan from Scott's dad. They wanted it to be this affordable but cool place that students can go and just hang out and get some good food that wasn't too pricey. Scott was raised by 2 entrepreneurs, so he was super into the business side of things, and he was really interested and really excited to be opening his own business. And it was great for Lacey as well because she loved interior design, so she got to decorate the inside and furnish it, and she wanted to make it really nice but also really relaxed for students to come and hang out. She made it really rustic. The signs were made out of driftwood, there were little buckets of peanuts on the tables, and it was really popular, which was amazing, especially as their first little business, because it can be hard to start up a restaurant that's not only popular but also profitable. But Lacey was really missing being near her family. She was missing being home. So in 2000, they packed it up, they sold the restaurant, and they moved to Modesto. And they bought a bungalow there for $177,000 on Covina Avenue. It was a nice, modest bungalow. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms. It was a pretty big block too. Like, it was 1,700 square feet, just humongous. Well, it is here anyway. Scott got a job there at a fertilizing company, and Lacey got a job as a substitute teacher. They got a golden retriever together named Mackenzie and 2 cats, Siamese mixes named Siam and Gracie. And they lived just like a normal suburban life. 2 years after moving to Modesto, Lacey found out she was pregnant, and she was due to have the baby on the 16th of February in 2003. They were both super excited. They even named the baby as soon as they found out it was going to be a boy, and they named it Connor. Apparently in her first trimester, because she was so excited, she started wearing maternity wear, even though like she wasn't showing. Like, most people don't show in their first trimester, but she was just so excited she couldn't wait. She also got started on doing up baby Connor's nursery room because, like I said, she loved all things interior design, and she was going for like a nautical theme. She went to a lot of prenatal classes, and she spent most of her free time just learning how to be a mother and getting prepared for this new step that her and Scott were going to be taking in their lives. Unfortunately though, even though Scott was telling all his friends and family how excited he was just a big old sleazeball at heart. So he was going to all of these trade conferences for work, and there was one in October of 2002, so Lacey was in her second trimester, and it was in Anaheim. It was a pest control trade conference. When he was there, he met this woman named Shawn Sibley. She was apparently this beautiful bombshell, and he immediately starts trying to flirt with her, and she was like, okay, relax buddy, I'm engaged, and apparently he backed off right away after she said this. But he kept saying to her, like, please set me up, and he was saying, like, I'm sick of sleeping with all of these blonde bimbos who have no brains, I'm sick of these one-night stands. Like, a great guy, isn't he? According to Shawn though, he seemed like a pretty nice, sweet, intelligent guy, and she said that he apparently seemed like he was ready to settle down with someone, even though he already had. But she didn't know that. Shawn had no idea that it was all a lie or that he was married, because how could she? So she set him up with her friend Amber Frey, who is a really big part of this case. If you know anything about this case, then I'm sure you've heard that name before. She was Shawn's best friend. She was a massage therapist. She was a single mother, and so Sean gives Scott Amber's phone number, and he sets up a date for them on the 20th of November in Fresno, which is where Amber lived. They planned to meet at a place called Elephant Bar, and then they would go to dinner from there. So after they met at the bar, they made their way to the parking lot to head to dinner. Scott was in a suit and he was like, look, I've been in this suit all day. Can we go back to my hotel so I can shower and so I can change? Which, like, the most obvious ploy to get her up to his hotel room to have sex, right? He's acting like he's this dude that's ready to settle down, but in reality, he just wants sex because he wants somebody who's not 7 months pregnant like his wife at home is. Amber thought this seemed perfectly reasonable though, so they got into Scott's pickup truck. He drove them back to his hotel. He was staying at the Radisson. When they got to his hotel, he poured this big bottle of champagne out of his bag and 2 glasses for them, really turning on the charm. Yes, I just came home because I wanted to get changed and have a shower, but I've got this big bottle of champagne here. What's that doing in my bag? He turns on the radio, he goes to have a shower, he comes out of the shower and gets out a box of strawberries, and he puts like some strawberries in their champagne, like basically just charming the pants off her. After that, they go out to a karaoke bar, they dance, they have fun together, and then they go back to his hotel and they have sex. On their second date, he cooked for her. He made her a seafood lasagna while they drank a bottle of wine together. So to Amber, he just seemed like this super sweet, super romantic guy. She had no idea that he was married because how could she? And she was excited about a future relationship together. She wanted to spend Thanksgiving with him, but you know, he was married. So he told her that he was going to be fishing with his dad in Alaska when actually he was home with his wife Lacey. Sean Sibley, the woman who set the two of them up, actually finds out on the 6th of December that he is married, and she calls him up. She's like, dude, what the heck? And he starts crying. He's like, you know, I lost my wife, whatever. A few days later, on the 9th of December, he calls up Amber. I'm not sure if he did this because Sean found out. Maybe Sean threatened to tell Amber, but he calls Amber up and he's like, are you home? I need to talk to you. And he goes over and he's like, look, I haven't been honest with you. I am married, or I was married, but I lost my wife. And he starts crying and he says, you know, it's too painful to talk about. So he doesn't give her an explanation or anything, just that he was married and he lost his wife. Sneaky little bugger got out of that one with his, oh, woe is me, I'm so sad, it's too hard to talk about. Amber actually felt really bad for him, and it also made her think, oh, he's been in a long-term relationship, so he's definitely a relationship kind of guy. That's great to hear that he can be committed, and she liked him even more. Because she has no reason to think that he's lying. I mean, why would you lie about something like that? He starts convincing her that he's this widower and it's going to be really hard this Christmas because it'll be his first Christmas as a widower. And he also told her he was going to be in France for Christmas and New Year's because he's not a widower. He does have a wife who he needs to be at home with. On the 8th of December, Scott bought a 14-foot boat for $1,400 in cash, even though I think he and Lacey were like having a few financial problems at the time, like to the point where they had to go and pawn some jewelry for some extra cash. On the 14th of December, he went to a holiday party with Amber Frey. He dressed in a nice suit. She dressed in a beautiful red dress. They looked amazing. And there's this photo of them at the party where they look great and they look really happy together. Meanwhile, on the same exact night, Scott's 8-month-old pregnant wife, Lacey, was at a Christmas party alone, which is just so sad. So a couple days later, on the 23rd of December, is when we really start getting into this case. So at 8:30 a.m. on the 23rd, Lacey wakes up, she gets dressed, she goes to the grocery store, she gets a facial wax, and she gets a manicure. At 5:45 p.m, Scott and Lacey go to Lacey's half-sister Amy Roche's hair salon that she worked at because she was a hairdresser, and she gave Scott a haircut. Scott actually invited her over for pizza that night, but Amy already had plans, so they left the salon at like 8 p.m. and picked up some pizza from Mountain Mike's on the way home. And then at around 8:30 p.m. when they got home, Lacey calls her mum to chat and talk about the Christmas Eve dinner they were going to have the next day. Because the Roches were going to have a Christmas Eve dinner at their house, and then the Petersons were going to have a Christmas brunch at their house the next day, which Lacey was really excited about both of them. Scott and Lacey then get into bed after the phone call and they watch TV until they fall asleep at around 10:30 p.m. Now we're at the 24th of December, and there's a more detailed version of this that I'm going to get into in part 2, but for now I'm just going to give you the short rundown. Lacey wakes up at around 7:30, has some breakfast, and Scott wakes up an hour later at around 8:30. Lacey's telling Scott all of her plans for the day. She's going to go and walk the dog, then she's going to go to the grocery store because she wanted to make this like French toast creme brulee type of thing for the brunch they were having the next day, and that needed to marinate for like 8 to 24 hours, so she needed to get on that. At 9:30 a.m, Lacey was watching Martha Stewart, and she was making these like lemon meringue cookies on her show, which Lacey decided she wanted to make as well. Then at around 10 a.m, while Lacey was mopping, Scott left. He went to this like little warehouse office type of space he has where he leaves his boat, he's got a computer there, and while he was there, Lacey went and took their dog Mackenzie for a walk. She was seen at 10:30 a.m. by her neighbor Karen Service walking Mackenzie, and then 15 minutes later at 10:45, one of their other neighbors named Mike Giavetta said that he saw Mackenzie at the park by himself and his leash was really muddy. So he took Mackenzie, he went and put him back in the Petersons' backyard just to make sure that he was safe, and meanwhile Scott is at his warehouse. He replies to some emails between 10:30 and 11, and originally he was going to go and play golf but decided it was too cold, and so he decided to take out his new boat and do some fishing at the Berkeley Marina instead. He left his office at around 11:15 and got to the marina at around 12:45. Then at 2:15 he started to head back home. He called their home phone but left a message because Lacey didn't answer, and then he called her mobile and left this infamous message where he basically says, "Hey beautiful, it's 12:15 and I'm leaving Berkeley now." He was also meant to stop and get a basket from this place called Bella Farms, but he couldn't make it anymore, so he asked Lacey on this voicemail if she could go and do that. Then he ended the message saying, "I'll see you in a bit, sweetie. Love ya, bye." At 4:15 he arrives to his warehouse, he unloads his boat, heads home, and gets home at around 5:15 p.m. When he gets home, he notices Lacey's Land Rover Discovery is in the driveway, but when he gets inside, Lacey isn't there. He also noticed their dog Mackenzie was there with his leash still on, but he didn't really think too much of it at first. He thought that maybe Lacey's parents had come and picked her up so they could go and do shopping and prep for dinner that night. So he went and had a shower, he washed his clothes from that day because he said they smell like fish from, well, fishing all day. But even if they smell like fish, I feel like that's so weird. Like, who gets home and puts their clothes from that day in the wash? Either that's sketchy or he's the most organized person in the entire world, because I've never done that in my life. I don't know anyone that has. When he got out of the shower, he went and listened to the messages on their home phone. He heard his own message to Lacey from when he was leaving the marina, but then after that there was a message from Lacey's stepfather Ron asking if they could bring some whipped cream with them on their way, which obviously meant that she wasn't with her parents like he originally thought. So at 5:15 p.m. he calls Lacey's parents, Sharon and Ron, and they all start looking for Lacey. Scott starts knocking on neighbors' doors, he's calling friends, he also takes their dog Mackenzie on a walk down to the park because, you know, she was very, very heavily pregnant at the time, so he thought, what if she had fallen over? What if she's had an accident? Sharon's calling up hospitals and stuff with the same sort of idea, but nobody finds any trace of Lacey, so at 5:47 p.m, Lacey's stepfather Ron calls 911 to report her missing. And that's all of the information for part 1. So part 2 of this case will be up on my channel tomorrow. I'll link it in my description as soon as it's up, and hopefully I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye guys.